This is the Demystifying Crypto and Building Wealth podcast.
I knew that would be worth trillions.
That had never existed in human history.
There's been massive opportunities.
The #1 podcast to help you understand and get insights into the crypto world, blockchain technology, wealth building, and financial investing. Now, here's your host, Tico Tawari, the world's #1 most trusted cryptocurrency analyst and Wall Street veteran with decades of experience in the financial space.
Welcome, Big T here for another IG Live, where we will talk a little bit about what's going on. And there is quite a bit to talk about today. Really some amazing things happening politically with Bitcoin. We're seeing this level of Bitcoin being spoke about on a national stage in a way that I have never ever seen before. You have to remember that when I first came into Bitcoin, nobody wanted to hear about it. Nobody wanted me to write about it. I've lost bank accounts because I've simply written about Bitcoin. And back in 2016, Bitcoin was widely considered to be nothing more than a way to buy drugs, commit crime, or to evade, money laundering and KYC rules. So we have come a long way where a former president is talking about actually adding Bitcoin to a national strategic reserve and to make it a core holding of the U.S. government, which is just absolutely incredible how much things have changed. And now that Wall Street is readily embracing this asset. This is something that I had expected on the Wall Street side. This is something I've written about, that politicians would eventually have to embrace Bitcoin because of this massive voting block that it gives you, essentially not control over, but access to. But I didn't think it would happen this cycle. I thought it would be one or two more cycles from now. So it's really remarkable to see how quickly this adoption cycle is happening. So let's get to it. I don't like talking about politics because it's so divisive. And I've said this repeatedly. My work is for everyone. I don't care what political party you're affiliated to. What I care about when it comes to politics and political policy is how it affects my investments and how it affects the things that I recommend from an investment standpoint. And so this is what really matters when it comes to politics for me, because I look through the lens of the world as a business person, because that's what I do. So we do need to talk about politics a little bit. I already talked about President Trump coming out, stating what he will do should he become president again. What I think is very interesting, all these years I have told you to look at what people do rather than what they say. So back in 2018, when Wall Street was speaking very negatively about Bitcoin, I told you to look at what they were doing. And what they were doing was laying the groundwork to actually get involved in Bitcoin through custody and through financialization of Bitcoin assets, and also through trading. That they were going on the long side while talking Bitcoin down. So the reason why I bring that up is that there were reports that Kamala Harris's, I don't know what we call it, administration group, had reached out to crypto people or crypto companies in an attempt to reset the relationship with crypto companies. Okay, that's great. That's what they're saying, but what are they doing? Well, 2 days after that, we saw $2 billion of Bitcoin moved from government wallets to exchanges, which is the reason why Bitcoin dropped 5-7%, because they're now selling their Bitcoin. This is after President Trump has said that if he's elected, he's not going to sell the Bitcoin. He's going to put it in a national reserve. Any Bitcoin that the U.S. government gets, they're not going to sell. So this is very important. There still seems to be this divide between the Republican side, which appears to be quite pro-Bitcoin, and the Dem side, which is showing, again, they're saying, we're going to reset the relationship. But what are they doing? They're dumping $2 billion worth of Bitcoin. Now, I don't care if they want to dump all their Bitcoin. I'd rather them sell their Bitcoin down here than at 150K, a $250,000 or $500,000. And the thing to remember is that Bitcoin is not its success is not dependent on anyone. Like, I really want everybody to truly understand that. Bitcoin became a $1 trillion asset without anybody's help. It didn't need Wall Street. It didn't need the federal government. It didn't need any government. In fact, most governments were trying to prevent the adoption of Bitcoin, as was the traditional banking system. The only reason why the traditional banking system and governments are now accepting Bitcoin is because they have no choice. Think about that. Bitcoin became a $1 trillion asset faster than any other asset in the world without government approval and without traditional finance. Bitcoin needs no one. No one. Understand that. So if you see volatility because some politician said this or some politician said that, or people think the Dems are anti-crypto and the Republicans aren't, and there's volatility because of that, your job is to take advantage of that volatility. So if they sell off Bitcoin because Kamala Harris is leading in the polls and people think that, she's going to be super anti-crypto, you buy into that weakness. You don't buy into the idea that somehow Kamala Harris or the Democratic Party can kill crypto, because they can't. If the Chinese could not kill crypto, and China has the most authoritarian command and control economy I have ever seen, then there's no way that any American government can kill crypto adoption. It is too late. You have to understand, in America, the tail wags the dog. What do I mean by that? It's all about the money. And the largest capital allocators are Wall Street, right? So Wall Street is where the money is. Wall Street tells the government what to do. It's an ugly truth, right? It's unpleasant, but it is the truth. And so it is our job to understand the world as it is, not to try to fall into this idea or dream of the way we think things should be. One of the good things about making a lot of money is that you can help shape the world into the direction that you want it to go, that you think it should go, versus the way that it is. But as an investor, you have to look at the way the world is, even if it's ugly and not attractive and not the way that we want it to be. And at the end of the day, economic incentives trump all, especially in America. Economic incentives drive everything. And the largest economic incentives come from Wall Street. That's just the way it is. So the fact that Wall Street has now embraced this asset, they are building financial products around this asset, you can't put that genie back in the bottle. So I want you to not get too caught up as to who is sitting in the Oval Office as it relates to these crypto assets. It doesn't matter. I will say that if President Donald Trump wins, then we will probably see the magnitude of the move will be bigger, I believe, and the length of the move will be longer. If Kamala Harris wins, we'll still have a big move. I just don't think the move will be as big, and I don't think the market move will be as long. But I could be completely wrong about that. That remains to be seen. But I can tell you that if President Trump follows through on his promise of creating a Bitcoin strategic reserve, not selling any Bitcoin, and any new Bitcoin that the U.S. government gets, putting it into that reserve, that's incredibly bullish. And if Senator Lummis's law passes, which I doubt, where she wants to create an actual national strategic reserve for Bitcoin, where the U.S. government continues to buy Bitcoin, you'd see $700,000 Bitcoin in a heartbeat, right? A Bitcoin would immediately get monetized at a minimum to the value of gold, because it would now be considered a global strategic reserve. If America makes Bitcoin part of its strategic reserve, the rest of the world has to follow. They have to follow. So to me, this is just such an exciting time of where we are in this space. And I talk about Bitcoin because as Bitcoin goes, so does the entire ecosystem. Friends, I can speak today, and tomorrow the whole crypto market can be down 50%. And it doesn't matter. Do you understand how early we are? Do you understand how much money there is to be made moving forward? Think about it like this. Bitcoin itself is 15 years old. So if we say, okay, the first real desktop computers in America started hitting 1984, right? So you could say that this is essentially 1999 in terms of adoption of this asset. Think about how far the values have gone in the technology space from 1999 to now. And so what we've seen about crypto is that value accrues at a much, much faster pace than it does in the stock market. And much more value accrues. So as much value that is already accrued to Bitcoin, it's already over $1 trillion asset. The combined market of all crypto is over $2 trillion. Eventually, this asset class, 20, 30, 40, 50, $100 trillion. It's there, it's in front of us. Our job is to be dumb enough to do nothing, right? If that makes sense. It's just buy great assets, leave them alone, and go live our life. Dollar cost average into more great assets, enjoy our lives, and just let time do the heavy lifting for us. Look, we're all going to die. Our job simply is to leverage time so that it works for us. The time will go by no matter what. So if we want to improve our financial lives, we must own assets. You must own assets. So then if you're going to own assets, and time's going to march on anyway, you want to own assets that are going to do extremely well over a long period of time, because time is the great equalizer. In my opinion, Bitcoin and crypto assets are the premier assets that are going to do above average, that's terrible English, over time. If we look back over the last 5, 10, 15 years, Bitcoin has been a tremendous asset, and it is only just beginning to start to get adopted by the wider public. Again, my message to you is no matter the volatility, don't worry about it. Treat the volatility as a gift. If you have extra money, go buy more Bitcoin. If you don't have extra money, don't worry about it. Just go live your life. But do not get crazy by the day-to-day moves that you will see in this asset class, because you're putting yourself through unnecessary stress. Everything is now on our side. Everything is now working in our favor as crypto investors. Everything. And nothing and no one can get in the way of it. And that's an amazing place to be in when you're an investor. An amazing place. The other thing I want you to focus on is that we have $35 trillion in debt. There is no way to pay that debt back. You can pay it back in nominal dollars, but those nominal dollars are going to be devalued. There is no question that the US dollar, its buying power, is going to continue to drop, and will probably drop at a higher rate than normal because the debt load is so large. The only way that that can be prevented is if interest rates are artificially held down at a very, very low rate, which creates all other types of problems. So the economic backdrop, the fiscal backdrop, all works in our favor. And then the fact that this is being adopted by politicians as a way to tap into that voting block of people that own crypto, I want to show you that all the fundamental drivers that you need to create massive value are there for us. Now, can I tell you the exact day that that value will be unlocked? No, I can only tell you that that value will be unlocked in a time frame that makes sense for us. And I'll give you an example. Back in 2019, I recommended Tesla. I gave a private speech to a group of folks, and I recommended Tesla. And I talked about very similar things about a Bitcoin, about there was this adoption cycle in EVs, AI, that was going to be incredibly beneficial for Tesla. I talked about that Tesla stock was wildly volatile, and that was just kind of the price you had to pay. Well, I made that recommendation of Tesla. Right after I made the recommendation, I think the stock might have dropped 30 or 40%. I mean, it really got hit hard. And then the following year, it 10x'd. That is the nature of those types of assets, these types of assets. I can give this type of impassioned talk about Bitcoin today, and it can literally drop 50% tomorrow for no reason. And that's just the nature of the asset. You know, getting mad at it is like getting mad at a roller coaster for going up and then crashing down. It's the nature of the asset. And so if you want to make life-changing gains, you have to come to terms with the drawbacks of making life-changing gains. And that is sometimes a level of volatility that makes you feel like throwing up, and a level of volatility that you can't understand, that there's no apparent reason for. And we have such a drive for control. We have such a drive for pinning reasons on things that we don't understand, that when we don't have a reason, it leaves us feeling exposed. And I get it. But if you really want to change your life through this type of asset investing, you got to get comfortable with uncomfortability. And if you can't, that's fine. Buy the S&P 500. There's no problem with that. You'll make money, but you'll make money a lot slower. Okay, question here from Wakita. What about the controversy about Bitcoin farms, electricity usage, negative effects on people living nearby? How could that potentially investors? Okay, so I'm going to speak to the electricity usage. There is no question that Bitcoin uses an enormous amount of energy. The question is it a valuable use of energy? And most people that don't understand crypto or Bitcoin will say, no, it's not a good use of energy. So let's compare it to other uses of energy, specifically the US government. So in order to protect the value of the dollar, the US government has to have a standing army. We spend about $1 trillion a year on that army. That army consumes billions of gallons of diesel, fuel, jet fuel, all types of different energy. So if we look at Bitcoin, Bitcoin consumes enormous amounts of energy, but far less than the federal government, far less than armed forces do, and even far less than the traditional financial system does. And what do we get for that? Well, we get an immutable money supply, right? We get a fixed money supply. We get essentially a central bank in cyberspace that nobody can manipulate, nobody can force to do something it doesn't want to do. We get the ability to transact with each other in a way that doesn't rely on trust. We don't have to rely on a trusted third party. We can store our own money. We can send our own money anywhere we want to in the world. So we have a global payment system. We have a global banking system, essentially. We have a global central bank that doesn't require a single gun, a single bullet, a single ship, or a single missile to protect. Well, that's incredibly valuable. You can't get all that value for free. And the cost of that is the electricity cost. Hopefully that helps answer that question. Do we need government support to go to a $10 trillion market cap? We do not, and I will explain why. The world is run by wealthy people that want to make more money and protect the money they have. It's not poor people or the middle class that determine the direction the world moves towards. Politicians will tell you that all day because they want your vote. But at the end of the day, it's the mega rich and the people that service the mega rich that make a determination as to, you know, where the world goes, what the world does, what laws are passed, and how money flows through the world. So the mega rich care about keeping their money safe. Now, the rate of debasement that is going on in the American dollar cannot be offset by the stock market, certainly can't be offset by the bond market. People in bonds are just getting their money destroyed, and it can't be offset by gold. What they are going to wake up to is that in order to protect the rest of their wealth, they're going to have to take a portion of their current wealth and put it in Bitcoin. And as the world's mega wealthy wake up to that idea, they are going to start allocating their capital, more of their capital to Bitcoin, and they're also going to start allocating their influence to Bitcoin to protect it, and also to create more products around it so it's easier for them to get in and out of it and for them to borrow against it. So we saw Cantor Fitzgerald, I think his name's Howard Lutnick, talked about that Cantor Fitzgerald is going to be coming out with lending products for Bitcoin. Well, of course, it makes sense. The mega wealthy, what they do is they build wealth in equities or in real estate. They borrow against it. They never pay taxes. And when they die, their heirs get their assets at a stepped up basis. And so they don't have any tax liability. So this is the way that wealth is passed down in America. And this is the way that wealth is utilized by the wealthy without having to pay taxes. So of course, that's going to come to Bitcoin. And that will take Bitcoin to a multi-trillion-dollar market cap. Okay, so somebody's asking me, so are you keeping your sell half your stack at 150K? Yes, I'm going to sell half my Bitcoin stack at 150K. Why? Because I'm 53 years old. There are things I can do in my 50s that I won't be able to do in my 60s. There'll be things I can do in my 60s that I can't do in my 70s. And so I want to prioritize for that. That's why. And I want a jet. It's completely irrational, totally self-centered, but I really want a jet. And I got to get it out of my system. Maybe I'll only own it for a few years and then I'll sell it. But at 150K, I can go buy a jet. Question is, what portfolio size you're when having a trading stack and a long-term holding stack of crypto? Okay, I can't speak to you personally, but I can reference what I have written about before. I've generally said 5 to 10% allocation, long-term allocation to Bitcoin makes sense. In terms of what I've said in the past is you've got to look at, let's say 10% of your assets are part of your trading portfolio. You have to ask yourself, okay, how much of that 10% do I want to have in Bitcoin? That's a personal decision. And as I said, in terms of a long-term allocation, 5 to 10%, a lot of it depends on your age and your risk tolerance. Of course, my allocation is much, much higher than that, but I have a deep understanding of Bitcoin, and I can live through a 50% or 60% or 85% drawdown, which I have numerous times, and not want to jump out of a window. That's not true for everybody else. Will alts make 10 times this bull run? I mean, I think a bunch of them will do much, much better than that. There will be updates on the PB, on the portfolio. I'm not doing anything yet with that other than holding because, we got a lot of upside ahead. So when we get that next major up push, that's when we'll revisit and we'll see what is participating and what is not. And that will tell us a lot about the overall quality of those other names. This is something I have to do. I've just been busy. So if the tax consequences don't matter, then you're better off selling sooner rather than later because of the fee is 10x in Ethy versus the other options. That's just something I've just been very busy and I just need to take care of, and we'll probably do that this week. Tika, do you think the crash will come after the election? I don't know, but here's my thought is any crash this year or any crash next year is a buying opportunity. I do not see American equities peaking until 2026, 2027, somewhere in that range. So I still think there's a lot of money to be made in American equities. In terms of crypto, all the way until June, July of next year, any crash is going to be an opportunity. As we get later into next year, then we have to be a bit more cautious because generally you get about an 18-month bull market peaks about 18 months after the halving. Now, it could be different this time because we have all this institutional capital coming into the market. That is going to be kind of a game time decision. I do have Sisu, but I don't have any time to use her right now. I'm hoping that I will get a chance to get back on Sisu maybe a little later in the year. Question is, do I think a recession will affect crypto prices the rest of the year? Look, recessions affect all asset prices. I think I would rephrase that question is, if we have a recession this year, do I think that would lead to a buying opportunity in crypto? And the answer is yes. It would be a buying opportunity rather than, hey, we got to go run for the hills and stay out of the asset for a few years. Okay. All right, I think that's it. Okay, I know there are some questions that I probably missed. Friends, I want to thank you so much for tuning in. It is really great to connect with you and share some of my ideas around how I see this asset being adopted. It's an incredible time to be alive. It's an incredible time to have an understanding of this asset class, because I just think we're going to look back at this time and say, how was this so cheap? How did I let this opportunity escape me? And I hope you will not be in that position. I hope you'll be one of the few people that says, wow, okay, I'm so glad I got long Bitcoin. I'm so glad I got long some of these other coins, and I left them alone, even when we had all this crazy volatility, because I believe this asset will continue to transform lives the way it's transformed my life and the life of thousands of my subscribers over the last 9 years. All right, friends, thank you so much. And as I always like to say, I want you to always remember, let the game come to you.
So that concludes today's episode. Thank you for listening. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments section. You can find the show notes on www.tikatiwari.com. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with others, talk about it on social media, and leave a rating and review. Don't forget to subscribe so that you never miss another episode. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.